according to Max Herman, who is Gennady Golovkin's manager, Triple G would be willing to return to the UK later on this year to take on Billy Joe Saunders in a big middleweight unification showdown. I'm going to quote Max Herman directly here. He says, "We tried to do Billy Joe Saunders' fight, but it didn't work out, but we're still interested because he has the last world title belt. If we can make the fight in the future, we would, because Gennady's aim has always been to unify the division, win all the belts. From our point of view, we made a very good offer, but he rejected it. In the future, maybe at the end of the year or next year, it could happen. Of course, he could go to the UK for this fight. Last time we had negotiations with Frank Warren, it was clear that the fight would have to happen. That the fight would happen in the UK. From our point of view, we didn't try to make the fight in the US. We said we would come to the UK, no problem." So those are the words of Gennady Golovkin's manager, Max Herman. Now, I've seen numerous interviews in the lead up to this Brook Golovkin fight. Interviews with Golovkin himself, interviews with his promotional representative, Tom Loeffler, interviews with his trainer, Abel Sanchez, and I've just read out this excerpt from an interview with his manager, Max Herman. And all four of those men have been talking about what Golovkin is going to do after the Kell Brook fight, who he's going to fight later on this year or next year. Now, clearly, judging by that, because this is what they're doing, they see the Kell Brook fight as a foregone conclusion. They think they're just going to turn up, snatch snatch Brook's belt, but obviously Brook's belt is not on the line. The fight's at middleweight. They're just going to snatch the money that they're being paid, and go back to Kazakhstan or America or wherever Gennady Golovkin is living at the moment. They see it as easy as snatching candy from a baby. And maybe it will be that easy. We have to wait and see. But when you have a team, not just the fighter, but his whole team, behaving so nonchalantly about the man they've got in front of them, I can't help but get flashbacks to some of the massive upsets in the past. I've been watching boxing many, many decades, and these type of massive upsets occur in these type of situations where you've got a guy and his team totally overlooking the man in front of them. It reminds me of Mike Tyson when he was about to fight Evander Holyfield back in the early 90s, when Tyson was still champion. But he took a voluntary defense out in Japan against a guy called Buster Douglas, and it was supposed to be just another Mike Tyson showcase in Japan, just like the Tony Tubbs fight. It obviously didn't turn out that way. Buster Douglas upset the apple cart, beat Mike Tyson, and he fought Holyfield instead. It also reminds me of Gerald McClellan when he fought Nigel Benn. Gerald McClellan and his promoter Don King were trying to set up a big showdown with Roy Jones Jr. And the plan was to go over to the UK, snatch Nigel Benn's WBC belt, and then have the unification match with Roy Jones. They saw it as taking candy from a baby. They saw it as a foregone conclusion. Also reminds me of Tommy Morrison when he was all set to fight Lennox Lewis. I remember, I think it was after the Bruno fight, they announced the Lewis Morrison fight. Lewis was given a jacket by the MGM Grand because that's where the Lewis Morrison fight was going to be. Obviously, Lewis did fight Morrison later on in his career, but this was when Lewis was still unbeaten. I think Morrison had the one loss to Ray Mercer at the time, and they were setting up this fight between the two of them, unification clash, WBC, WBO. And Morrison took a tune-up against Michael Bent and got knocked out in a round. He was totally overlooking Michael Bent. He thought it was a foregone conclusion. And he just turned up, knocked this guy over, then go into the Lewis fight and get paid lots of money. So yeah, as I say, massive upsets tend to occur in situations where the fighter and his team are overlooking the guy they've got in front of them. Now, it's one thing to expect an easy fight when you're facing a journeyman. If you're a two-time Olympian and you're facing some journeyman who's got one win and 50 losses and he's never had a knockout and he's been knocked out in every one of his losses, even in that situation, some people would say you still shouldn't overlook the man in front of you, but it's a lot more understandable when that's what you've got in front of you. But when you're facing somebody who is a world caliber fighter, albeit a man who's been fighting at a much lower weight division, it's a bit different to overlook somebody like that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that my prediction has changed and that I'm now picking Kell Brook because of how nonchalant the Golovkin team seemed to be about the fight. No, I'm still picking Golovkin. I still think he'll win decisively. I still think that stylistically it's a very bad matchup for Kell Brook, never mind the size dynamic. But having lived through so many massive upsets in the past, I can, if Golovkin was to lose to Brook, it would be shocking. And I know I've joked in the past that I would have to reassess my entire life if Golovkin lost to Brook. Obviously, I'm joking and being facetious or whatever. The reality is I would have seen bigger upsets, and I have seen bigger upsets than if Kell Brook was to beat Golovkin. When Mike Tyson lost to Buster Douglas, even when he lost to Holyfield, those upsets were so huge. For those of you who didn't live through that era and didn't see those fights at the time, I'm telling you, it's very difficult for you to comprehend how big an upset those two fights were. Mike Tyson was literally seen, and believe you me, people, anybody that was watching boxing those times will tell you this. Mike Tyson was literally seen by many people as not only invincible in a boxing ring, but also invincible outside a boxing ring. Many people thought that Tyson was invincible in hand-to-hand combat against any man on the planet. This is how, what's the word I can use here? This is how, out of control, out of hand, this Tyson aura of invincibility had gotten. This is the perception that people had of him. So when Tyson lost to Douglas, and even when he lost to Holyfield, he'd never fought in the UK at those times. But even in the UK, I remember very clearly, it was a massive national shock. I mean, everybody was talking about it. The Douglas fight in school, later on the Holyfield fight in, school and college, people were talking about it. It was all over the news in the UK. It was all over the newspapers, all over the television. Oh my God, Mike Tyson lost. It was so shocking that it was like national news, a big national news story in the UK. And this is an American fighter. That's how widely revered Tyson was. So his aura of invincibility was far beyond what Golovkin's is today. And obviously Tyson's aura of invincibility evidently was overblown. Massively overblown. But as I say, I've lived through monumental upsets, and they occur in these type of circumstances, as I keep saying, where the fighter and his team are planning past the fight. So will this be Gennady Golovkin's Buster Douglas moment? I seriously doubt it. But if it isn't, then looking at Golovkin and his team's attitude, I wouldn't be surprised if he does have that moment at some stage in his career, a shocking upset defeat. I wouldn't be surprised at all, because when your team is that confident in you to the point of complacency, it's easier for the fighter to become complacent mentally. Golovkin is a guy who is always in shape. So whether he's fighting a cab driver or whether he's fighting a multi-weight world champion, he's always going to be in good physical condition. But a lot of the time, when it comes to these upsets, it's not really so much about the physical condition, but it's more about the mental condition. Because if you go into a fight and you're not expecting a tough fight, but you end up getting a tough fight, it can be a shock to the system. When you're going in there and your whole training camp has been, geared towards, in your mind, thinking that you're going to blow this guy out, and you go in there and actually it's really, really tough. Mentally, you can kind of go into meltdown in a fight. So will that happen to Golovkin here? Again, I'm saying I doubt it. I just don't think Kell Brook stylistically has the tools necessary. But if he really is this different fighter, in quotes, that he's been saying he is, and that Eddie Hearn has been saying he is, with the extra weight, 160 pounds, if he really is this magnificent different fighter, then maybe we will see one of those monumental upsets. As a fighter of Golovkin's caliber, you really should be a historian. You really should be studying the history of boxing and seeing where other fighters have gone wrong. And I just do feel that even though Brook is a couple weight divisions, has been campaigning a couple weight divisions below, I don't know, I just, having witnessed what I've witnessed before in the past, I just feel uneasy when a guy is so blatantly overlooking the man in front of them to be talking about who they're going to fight afterwards. Like Loeffler has been doing, like Abel Sanchez has been doing, like Golovkin's manager has been doing. Golovkin himself even has been saying, this fight's going to go 5-6 rounds or whatever. Abel Sanchez has been saying the same, and it might do, it may well be like taking candy from a baby, but having that kind of attitude for any championship level fight, I think eventually that could come back to haunt them. So those are just my thoughts, people. As far as the Billy Joe Saunders fight, you know what, I'll leave that for you guys to debate. How do you think Billy Joe Saunders would do against Gennady Golovkin? Do you think he would give Golovkin his toughest test at 160? Do you think any of the other guys out there would be more difficult for Golovkin? Do you think Billy Joe Saunders would have a better chance of beating Golovkin than Chris Eubank Jr. or Danny Jacobs? Or maybe even Canelo? Let me know in the comment section below. And also, let me know how you feel about everything I've raised in this video. Alright? It's your boy Hartman. I'm out.